Okay, Mayor, you should be good.
Okay, welcome everyone to a special City Council meeting. Today is April 16th, Thursday, April 16th. The time is 1:02 p.m. Summer, let's start with a roll call of who is here on the Zoom call with us, okay?
Okay, I have Mayor Emily Niehaus, Mike Duncan, Moab City Council, Carly Castle, Assistant City Manager, Joel Linares, City Manager, Kaylin Jones, Moab City Council, Karen Guzman Newton, Moab City Council, Clint York, Finance Director, Lori Simonson, City Attorney. Oh, did I already say Mike? He just moved. Mike Duncan, Moab City Council, Ronnie Darasari, Moab City Council, Tony Knutson Boyd, Moab City Council.
Thank you so much. And we are on to our first item on the agenda, the proposed resolution 23-2020, a resolution appointing 4 people to serve as members of the Arches Hotspot Region Coordinating Committee. So I'm just going to open it up to the council members to have a discussion if you wish, and I would entertain a motion at any time. So I guess just like as protocol has been, just raise your hand. And then I can call on you. Karen. You'll have to unmute yourself.
So I was just wondering if it would be, like, are we, like, just kind of start where we're thinking as council, how we would form the first 4 spots for the hotspot committee? I mean, do you want to, how would you like to go about this?
Kaylin?
So it seems like what we talked about last time, or one idea that was thrown out at our regular meeting, was that we could have 3 council members and 1 member of the public. It seems like one of the concerns about the original process was the lack of public involvement. But given the goals of this hotspot committee and the short time frame, I think it is going to really fall on the city council members to either to bear in mind all the commentary that we've received to this point and the diversity of opinions, as well as being in touch with constituents, because just with the time frame that we have to operate on, it's not necessarily so conducive, or the committee membership, it's not so conducive to an even more robust process. Hopefully, by having it noticed and presumably broadcast and minutes recording, the public will be more involved through this process. I think, as most of you know, I've been looking for public members, but the time frame is very short. I basically started thinking about this yesterday, and so I'd appreciate a little bit more time to come up with someone who's, or someones for ours to consider that are qualified and thoughtful and able to commit through the full time period. But I realize time is short, that we can't delay for very long at all. I'm thinking maybe just through the end of the weekend on that 1+ slots.
Ronnie?
Can I just ask a background question? So we got these additional packet pages yesterday that lay out the timeline, and just for me, or the public, other people looking at this, obviously when we've been having these discussions to revisit this whole hotspot thing, I mean, the idea was a process that would involve the public a lot. And so can someone just explain to me, and maybe people watching, when you look at the timeline, and thanks again to folks who put the timeline together, because it seems like, yeah, we have such a short time frame. We need something tight to commit to and follow. But it was a little unclear to me, and I then figured it might be unclear to members of the public. When you look at the timeline, is the idea that in these 2 meetings in April, and it wasn't even really clear to me, like, are these hour-long meetings? Are they potentially half-day meetings? I don't know if we know yet, but is the idea that within 2 meetings in April, we will review the original 11 projects, and people will throw in if they have other ones. And then within those first 2 meetings, the committee is just going to have to pick one.
Well,
So-
I think, Ronnie, that's a really good question. And I think it probably what's best is, Carly, if you would be willing to present on that information. Do you want to just take like 5 minutes, 7 minutes?
I'm
and
happy to.
present? Thank you. Okay.
I'll share my screen with you just so we're looking at the same thing. Ronnie, you asked some really great questions that hopefully I'll have adequate answers to. Let's see. Okay, so regarding the project schedule, you're right, Ronnie, this is a really ambitious, rigorous schedule. Another deadline besides the September 1st one that we're operating under is that UDOT wants a narrowed list that the committee will be focusing on by the end of April. So the hope is to meet by like at least the end of next week and maybe the weekend after, depending on how we set aside 2 meetings in anticipation of it being quite an extensive discussion. But if after the first meeting, you know, if that's a 2-hour meeting and it's easy to narrow down, then maybe the next meeting isn't required. And I'm glad you asked about engagement. Lisa is putting together a website as we speak, and we're actually going to be putting out a survey tomorrow be made available to the public to get some input on their attitudes towards the 11 projects, as well as giving them the opportunity to offer their own ideas for projects. And so we'll have it will be really quick, a week and a half of engagement on that, maybe 2 weeks of engagement. So those will be available. Some of the initial answers that we get will be available for that first meeting. And you'll also note some of the 11 projects too. I know it looks like a big chunk of projects. However, some of them, I imagine the committee will be able to eliminate quickly because they are not feasible for a couple of reasons. For example, the west parking structure, that was the downtown parking structure that was ultimately selected, and the committee probably doesn't want to go ahead with that. Probably similar for the east parking structure. Dispersed parking has been something we talked about for some time that's been very difficult to accomplish. The bypass, sorry, I'm kind of all over the place, but the bypass corridor too is probably not feasible just in terms of UDOT's funding capacity over the next decade or so. So it's easy to narrow this list down, I think, quite quickly. The broader discussions will be on new projects the committee members might be interested in, or the public. And the public engagement, I think Kaylin and Ronnie, you made some good points that it's going to be rapid, and we'll do what we can to get as much engagement as we can over the next few months. But if we're doing meetings every 2 weeks, it will be difficult to get substantial engagement and then process the engagement and then present it. So we're going to do our best. Lisa's coming up with a public engagement plan that should be available by your next meeting. We can try to move that up a bit if you prefer. And engagement will depend on ultimately the projects that are identified at the end of April. If it's just 2 projects or 2 or 3, we can really, I think there is some really substantial engagement opportunities that we can develop. But, and that's true of just generally this whole timeline. You can see my May's and June meetings are blank, and that's because it's just not totally clear yet what we will be evaluating and what information gaps there are, what kind of additional technical work needs to be done. So this will be fleshed out as we go along. Any questions? I see one from Ronnie.
Not to hog the mic, but yeah, so if this is going to go soon to a survey, my first question would be, is it going to be a little bit more detailed than just giving people these 11 bullets? Like, will there be a paragraph explaining which each one of those programs actually would entail, because otherwise it's hard for people to tell what it really means. But then my other concern is if we know some of these aren't feasible or they're going to drop off, should we call that list first before it goes into the survey, or put something in parentheses for people that says this is not feasible? I mean, I just don't know if we're wasting their time by putting the non-feasible ones on the list.
I think from a public engagement standpoint, we don't want to drop anything off before the committee actually makes a decision, just in terms of process. It's a way to keep the process, like the integrity of the process, which is there have been no predeterminations. This was my sort of inclination when I'm reading the list, but I don't want to hold the committee to it. And if the public feels really strongly about something like, I don't know if it's dispersed parking or an east parking lot or whatever it is, that decision should be made by the committee at a public meeting rather than me and Lisa saying, you don't have to worry about that.
Okay, but it's not like UDOT has said, these 4 we don't want to consider anymore.
No, I think they're sort of trying to read the tea leaves of, we don't know how interested people are. So there may be anticipating that some will drop off quite easily. But I don't, want to say that UDOT's totally changed their mind on any of them. They are the ones who suggested we start with the 11 initially, actually.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah.
Karen?
So you're interested in putting this survey out by this week, and then we're going to have that information by Wednesday or Thursday before our first committee meeting?
Yes, so we will have some information by the committee meeting. It probably won't be complete, but hopefully more information by the second committee meeting. So there'll be more time. I don't think at the first committee meeting you have to make any decisions. You can just start this committee can start having discussions and starting to narrow it down, but they can still have time to have like an additional week of feedback coming through.
Okay, because it seems like by the first meeting, there would be things that would come off of that list, because we really are on a time constraint and we're going to have to, focus projects quickly.
Mhm.
And I mean, would it make more sense to I guess have that survey go out after the first meeting? I'm just kind of what Ronnie's saying is,
I guess to chime in, I guess that's a call for you guys to make. The main thing we've been directed as staff is that there's a lack of public engagement. And so we're trying to rectify that. And so if you guys want us to have that first meeting before we put it out, that's doable. That's not how we were foreseeing it, just because we're trying to expand public engagement. As far as Ronnie's original question of, are these meetings an hour? Are they 2 or are they 3? I think that's a question for the committee. It's once they get together and they're working, and depends on what the workload is and what they're working through, will determine how long those meetings are. If they're getting a lot done and feel like we're really working through things, then an hour, 2 hours is probably fine. If we're into 2 or 3 meetings and there's a mountain of work still and we're not feeling like we're making the progress we need, those meetings will probably obviously need to be longer. So I think that's more of a question of, once we have the committee, what that committee looks like and how it's working, it will determine how long those meetings are.
And so I would like to, I know that that's going to bring up a lot of questions and logistics, but I do think that it's important for us to stick to the agenda item, which is picking who will serve on the committee. And so I just would like to ask now, by show of hands, which council members are interested in serving on this committee. Okay, so by that, it looks like we've got our 3 council members, and then there would just be, because there are, we've decided that there would be 4, then maybe we can keep our conversation around that. So Ronnie, you looked like you wanted to share something.
Oh, yeah. Thank you all for volunteering. That was not volunteering on my part to be a committee member, but I was going to say, if it's helpful, when you guys do the surveys to compile the information, I mean, I'm willing to help with the administrative end of that if it helps the staff with some extra labor on that.
Good to know. Thank you.
Mike, let's turn your mic on. So it looks like you're unmuted on our end.
Oh, here
but
we
maybe-
go.
There
Okay,
you
now you
go.
got it. Here we go. Yeah, I got one extra button here. So, thank you. So Karen, I've been talking a little bit about it, and for the fourth position, and there's a handful of names that some people that she's familiar with, some that I'm familiar with, and unfortunately, we haven't reached out to them yet. I can name those names if we wanted to, but the general idea is for either staff or ourselves or both of us, in order to ease the burden on you guys. I know you guys are busy. I fully expect to spend some time doing administrative stuff here. So I, for one, am volunteering to, if you guys accept, to do some of the reaching out so that by next Wednesday, we have some sort of a feeling from those people if they're interested, and if so, what their qualifications might be, so that by next Wednesday we have some idea who might serve as the fourth position and maybe serve as a chair as well if we elect to do so. But that's where I'm headed.
Okay, Karen?
I would just say that I think Wednesday's too late. I think these members need to be, or the one member needs to be picked by Monday or Tuesday, as the county council is going to submit their council on Tuesday at their meeting, and then there's already a meeting scheduled for Wednesday or Thursday for it. So I'd prefer to have that fourth person voted on before that.
Tawny, you, I think your mic was off, but it looked like you had a comment. Nope. Oh,
No, I didn't.
okay. Okay, well, Kaylin?
I support both those sentiments. I think that taking time to find someone who's willing and able, and also doing it in advance of the possible first meeting date are both good ideas. So I think that might take the form of effectively tabling position number 4, even if we appoint 3 now.
Okay, Ronnie?
Yes, and so my only concern about person number 4, as I'm sure is a concern for all of us, I don't know that I need to state this, but is that they definitely look at the timeline when they commit, and they commit to the timeline, because the last thing we want is, someone who isn't going to show up. But again, probably a given.
So Kaylin, do you want to put your thoughts into a motion?
Sure. I move to approve resolution 23-2020, confirming the appointment of Mike Duncan, Karen Guzman Newton, and Kaylin Jones as members of the Committee for the Arches Hotspot Regional Coordinating Committee to serve throughout the committee's duration as currently codified in Ordinance 2020-11 to expire on April 14th, 2021, and to appoint the 4th position at a meeting next Monday or Tuesday.
Okay, thanks for that motion. Is there a second? Karen, I saw your hand. Okay. Discussion about that? Karen?
How do we want to throw names out right now? Because I personally have talked to a couple of people and do have interest from some community members. I'm curious how we see this next step.
It's up to all of you what you would like to do in terms of a conversation about that 4th person. Now, this would be the time to have that if you wanted to do that, or you could do it, as you contact people and share with them the timeline. We could just say, email the council the interested person's name and whether or not they're comfortable with the timeline. And so then when we reconvene Monday or Tuesday, then we could at least have the list a list of people to look at and choose from. That's an option. And that would save us putting names out at this meeting of people that may or may not have, you know, may or may not yet be comfortable with it. Tawny?
I don't think it's wise to start naming names, especially if you haven't spoken to them and don't know whether they're interested. It's a little disconcerting to have your name thrown out on the internet to, unless they've absolutely expressed desire and they understand what it entails. I'm not comfortable doing that.
Karen?
I just want to point, I mean, the people who I would put out have been contacted, so it's not an unexpected bomb drop. But
Can you share the timeline too?
Yeah, they saw the agenda item. So
what do you think about putting names out through email?
I think that's great too. I mean, I think that's really effective and it gives people who we might not have thought about, the opportunity to.
Ronnie?
Does anyone have a suggestion? Since we're probably going to get a list of names and some of us may or may not know them or the nature of their interest or background. I mean, not like I'm, hiring for a job and I need someone's CV or something, but are we just going to do names or do we want like a paragraph from these people on the nature of their interest? Or I have no idea. I don't really have a preference. I just want to know what to expect.
Mike?
Well, with council members' approval, I would suggest that each of us, certainly the three of us that are already serving on the committee and other people that wish to contribute as well, anybody that has any idea of people who might be qualified and willing to serve, I'd be pleased to have your input. You don't have to name their names right now, but reach out to them by email, by phone. I don't care how you do it, as long as by the time next Monday, we'll say rolls around, we have some sort of expression from each of them that we can reach about A, their interest, and B, their qualifications. And there's no commitment, all right, on the part of the committee to take on any of them, but it provides us a list of names to choose from. So are you guys comfortable with that process? We don't have to name names right now, but what do you think?
Yep, council looks like the majority are nodding and saying, yes, that sounds good. So let's, but maybe before I call for the vote, real quick, a time for that meeting to occur on Monday or Tuesday. That would work for everyone. So I will just throw out a time. The county is meeting Tuesday, so let's do Monday so that they could be informed of what our membership makeup looks like. Let's start with Monday. So noon Monday or 1 Monday?
One's a little bit better. I'm not quite here by.
Oh, that's right. I was saying noon. I was thinking noon for lunch, but then I was like, it's 1:25 now. I'm forgetting something. So, okay, let's say 1 o'clock Monday. Does that not work for anyone?
That's fine.
Okay, so then I'll call for the vote. All those, oh, sorry, roll call. Gosh, I'm so anxious to never roll call. Okay, roll call vote. For those in favor of the motion that has been stated. Karen?
Aye.
Tawny?
Aye.
Ronnie?
Aye.
Kaylin?
Aye.
Mike?
Aye.
Motion passes 5-0. And now we're on to item number 2. Proposed Resolution 24-2020, a resolution appointing 6 people to serve as members of the Southeastern Utah Regional Transportation Plan Stakeholders Group. So different, but similar.
So
Who would like to talk about that?
We put
Sorry,
this one
Joel.
on the agenda. We put this one on the agenda because we were doing this other one. This first meeting is not until the 29th. Let me get the exact date and time. It is not until the 29th of April from 4 to 5:30. Based on the discussion that was just occurring with the last group, there is more time if we wanted to put this one out a little bit more and can come back. It's not as dire as the other one. So I just wanted to throw that out there based off what we were hearing from the discussion.
Ronnie?
just kind of a process thing again. So just as a reminder to me, the county is also gonna put 6 people on this. Is that right?
Yeah, so this group's being put together by UDOT and as a part of their transportation. They have allotted us 6 spots and they have allotted the county 6 spots. So you can appoint any 6 members you choose. Obviously, as a staff giving you recommendations, we would recommend that those 6 people be residents of the city, as the county then has the ability to appoint 6 of their own.
Okay, thanks. That's helpful. And then do we know how often, as I've been trying to think of names for this, do we know how often these guys are going to meet? Do we have any idea like when the following meeting after April 29th would be? I'm thinking time commitment. It helps people
Well, the
to
guidance,
know if they can pull it off or not.
the guidance I've been given is that this committee will go for a period of about 10 months and they'll meet 4 to 5 times. So once every 2 months is what I'm being told. I'm not quite sure what the time window of the meeting is. Might be 2 hours based off other ones I've seen them doing. But so about once every 2 months for about 10 months is what I'm being told.
Okay, great. And my last one was just because I didn't know if anyone had more insight, if it makes sense that the people on our Arches hotspot, that there's some overlap, that some of the same council members take part in this, or if this is really a different egg. That was just it.
So this is, to me, it's a very different process and it's a different project. This will lay out potential projects for UDOT over the next couple decades. And so you're going to have things that are like more on the front burner and all the way to the back burner, everything in between. So to me, it's a completely different project. It's more expansive, 30,000 view type thing where you're looking at what the entire valley needs over a large time frame, not like into a singular project and how to appropriate funds for one specific thing. So I think they're very different.
And will these meetings be noticed as well, Joel? Or these are more
No, these are not
unnoticed?
public meetings. These are going to be internal group working meetings in order for UDOT to gather information to put their package together to present to council and to the county council at a later time. So this is more information gathering, boots on the ground. What do we need? What, where are the projects at that you guys foresee? So this is going to be more like city members, could be council staff members. It's going to be more of a group that just is providing information for them to gather and go forward.
Thank you. Karen?
I was just curious. So Joel and Carly, do you guys see this group? I mean, staff would be like numbers on out of the 6, correct? Like compared to the other, I mean, would that make?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
I think to answer where I think you're going, I think staff would recommend that we not be included on the one we just made a motion on. I think that was very appropriate. I think that was probably the correct motion. This particular committee, I think it would be appropriate to have a couple staff members on this committee.
And then with that, do you have an idea? Have you reached out to certain staff? I mean, like if we were to appoint those staff members, I mean, like, again, hopefully it's not a bomb drop and they're like, oh, we can't, this is too much. Or, I mean, have those discussions been happening?
Yes. And this is completely within job description, job duty. Like this is, it
Okay.
would not be a bomb drop to any of them. They would be expected to do this and they would expect to do it.
Kaylin?
My question's been answered. Thanks.
Okay. Joel, I think it would be helpful. I'm not sure that we're prepared to vote on 6 members today, but perhaps what could be helpful to the council is if you were to submit to us via email sometime between now and the Monday meeting, what staff members you have preference that the makeup of that group. And then same question as before, who among you are interested in serving on this committee?
I would be, but I don't think it's appropriate with my day job. I think I can run into conflicts. So, no.
Okay. And I saw Kaylin's hand and Karen's hand, and I wanted to put it out there too that I would be interested and willing to serve on this the transportation committee. So but
And real quickly, just to comment on what Tony just said, this look at what we're doing with this is it's kind of like a general plan, like it's a general
Yeah.
plan of the area and what they're doing long term. So Tony, I don't know if it would be a conflict for you to serve on it. In fact, I think you're being plugged into the roads department the way that you are. You have an insight as to what the county and the city needs going forward over 2 decades, 3 decades, 4 decades into the future as far as road projects. So you might be just the opposite of a conflict. You might be the exact type of candidate that we're looking for that would be able to provide a lot of insight into what those projects look like long term. But I can look into that, and at our next meeting, I'll provide that information.
Yeah, if you'll look into that, and I'll talk with my boss and see what he thinks. I just don't want it to have odd appearances. So,
Absolutely. Optics are, and I'll look into that and run it by UDOT and their group and see how they feel about it, if they think it would be an issue, or if it's exactly what the type of information they're trying to gather.
okay, all right. Then I will leave it open.
I just have a scope question. Not that I'm going to give up one of our city seats of the 6, but does anyone know, does the region include Northern Spanish Valley, San Juan County? I just didn't know if they were going to have any representation or if we're only going to the Grand County line with this.
Joel?
That's a great question. My understanding is it's a larger region than just us, but I will make sure. I know that UDOT defines Southeastern, they include those other counties. But I know the way that we did the contract and the budgeting for it, that we in Grand County were the ones paying. So that's something I actually have to look at to see if we're just paying our portion, and if UDOT has reached out to those other counties and they're paying and they're doing it all up there and we just haven't been made aware of that, or if this is Grand specific. I'm not sure about that, Ronnie, but I'll find out.
And were you guys thinking that we should do this the same way, where we should email each other names, or?
Well, I think based on what I asked of Joel, it might be helpful to have Joel first email staff recommendations. And yes, I do think that based on the staff recommendations and the council members interested, we might come up with 6. So why don't we see where we land and agenda it for our next meeting as discussion and possible action. But at our next meeting, if we still feel like we want to reach out, that's something that we can do. As Joel said, this isn't as timely as the other, if you're all comfortable with that. And I'm still,
just to be clear, when you say next meeting, the Monday meeting or our next regularly scheduled? Okay, thanks.
the Monday meeting, that we could potentially, that I would entertain a motion to table this until our Monday meeting. But before you do that, I did just want to be very out of order for just a moment and just get some clarification about the survey. So did we say we did want the survey prior to the group meeting, or we want the survey after the first meeting of the group? And I guess I'm looking at Mike, Kaylin, and Karen for the direction on that one. Mike?
I'm comfortable with it coming out before. I don't see any point in delaying, I guess, even though I agree having items on there that aren't realistically candidates might serve to confuse people. A lot of people say, oh, I want to bypass. Well, there's no way. Okay, but that's okay.
Okay, so survey before. And Kaylin?
I was going to see, I have a little bit of a leaning towards survey after projects have been eliminated. While I think that the public engagement is important, also, if people vote for things and then they don't happen, that can be interpreted the wrong way as well. And so having as much congruence between what's realistic and what we're asking people might help manage expectations for what actually gets delivered at the end.
And Karen?
I agree with Kaylin. I mean, I feel like, again, if the bypass is a long-term $250 million project, that's not going to be on this hotspot funding. So,
okay.
Yeah.
Mike?
So you two have a good point. I mean, there's a dramatic simplification, actually. West and east parking structures are gone. Dispersed parking is realistically gone. US 191 expansion, probably.
So we'll just survey after. We'll
Okay,
circle
that's
after.
fine.
Okay,
That's good.
and so back to the, where we're at with the overall transportation. I would entertain a motion to table, or otherwise. Kalen,
I move to table resolution 24-2020 until our meeting next Monday at 1 p.m.
thank you, Kalen. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Karen. All, roll call. Vote. Tawny,
Aye.
Karen,
Aye.
Kalen,
Aye.
Mike,
Aye.
Ronnie.
Aye.
Great meeting, everybody. Is there a motion to adjourn?
I so move.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
We're adjourned. Have a great Thursday, everyone. Bye.
Thank you.